Hi, I'm Trish Young, and welcome to this talk on the importance of promoting yoga for school staff. So I'm giving this talk partly as a prelude to a CPD opportunity that I am providing through the Yoga Teachers Forum. CPD is primarily for yoga teachers who want to be better equipped for delivering staff yoga in schools, but certainly could be of interest to anyone in the education community, especially those with a responsibility for staff well-being. So I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit about my yoga journey and how I became a secondary school teacher. So my yoga journey began about 30 years ago now, on my first visit to Rishikesh in India. And it was on that visit that I realized the joy of asana, but also yogic philosophy provided me with a language for the things that I instinctively knew, but had not been able to explain. So needless to say, yoga has been an integral part of my life ever since. So after returning to the UK, I finished my degree and moved back to my hometown of Birmingham, which is when I stumbled really into working in secondary schools. So primarily that was as a volunteer schools outreach worker with a HIV and AIDS charity, then as a youth worker working with young Asian women, and then specifically school-based as a teaching assistant in two separate, very different secondary schools. So after a couple of years of saving, I returned to my travels, and this time it was in Nepal that I started to explore meditation. And I realized, certainly for me, but I think for everybody, the importance of creating opportunities for stillness and how that is fundamental to our health and well-being. So after returning from that trip, it was really then that my personal practice became part of who I am. And there were two factors that were instrumental in that. The first was having my daughter, because for me, it wasn't until I was pregnant that I really understood the importance of treating our bodies with loving kindness. And the second factor was moving to Cornwall, where for various reasons, my personal practice became super important to me. And I'm blessed enough to be able to call Cornwall home. So a couple of years later, I had completed yoga teacher training and was working as a teaching assistant in a secondary school. And it was in fact a staff and sixth form student yoga class that enabled me to cut my teeth, as it were, as a yoga teacher. And I remember that class with great funness. So relatively short time after that, I gained qualified teacher status with an RE specialism and soon became the head of that department. And then in 2013, I moved into my current role as a Key Stage 4 leader. And oh my practice became ever more relevant in terms of maintaining my own health and well-being. I remember, in fact, at the time, a colleague saying to me, or asking me how I planned to cope with the demands of that role. And of course I said, well, I have yoga. And his face was a picture, because of course his understanding of yoga was something you did on a mat in order to be bendy. So he must have really thought, gosh, how on earth does she think this is gonna help? So why then? Why is it so important that teachers and support staff have a dedicated approach to their well-being? Well, in an article that I wrote entitled "Yoga in Schools, Don't Forget About the Teachers," and incidentally, that article can be found in the 4th edition of the Yoga Teachers Forum e-magazine. I reflect in that on the student-centered nature of the recent push of yoga in schools. And whilst that's great, and I've seen for myself many times the benefits that yoga can have for young people, it doesn't acknowledge the extent to which yoga can benefit school staff. And yes, of course, students are going to benefit from a school staff yoga program. So it is a win-win situation. But I certainly feel that the government and I'm sure some school leaders need to show some genuine commitment to the personal development of teachers. And of course, the best way I know to facilitate that is through yoga. So teaching is a demanding profession in every sense of the word, physically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, schools are unforgiving environments to work in. And as a result, burnout is high, especially compared to other professions, and retention rates are low. The main reason given for leaving the profession is workload. And it has to be acknowledged that that workload can be so excessive that it has a detrimental effect on teachers' personal relationships and their family life. And that is quite simply unacceptable. There's also the crisis in teenage mental health that needs to be acknowledged, because this crisis means often, or it's often manifests in challenging and confronting behaviours that teachers are expected to navigate whilst delivering the curriculum. Despite all of this, teachers' wages have stagnated for almost a decade, which means that real wages have fallen. And of course, support staff are paid a pittance. Despite all of this, I would argue that it's the lack of recognition that is most damaging. And the fact that school staff are so hugely undervalued in society. And in fact, as a female-dominated profession, I think it's all too indicative of society's view of women. But of course, that's a different talk altogether. So how exactly can yoga help teachers? Well, yoga helps our bodies to be flexible, of course, but it also encourages us to listen to our bodies. And for people who are constantly all day long having to push their own needs aside, that then is super, super important to provide opportunities to check in with ourselves and to see how our bodies are doing. Breathing is so important for maintaining health. And I see all the time teachers and support staff, real shallow breathing, just not taking in any oxygen because the nervous system is stuck in fight or flight. And of course, that is going to have a devastating effect on their health and well-being. Yoga builds resilience, and that means that teachers and support staff will have the resilience to cope with even the most challenging of students, and be able to cope whilst remaining grounded themselves. Yoga, especially asana, encourages us to be creative and to be playful, and those transfer wonderfully into quality teaching. Yoga provides a really strong sense of self, but that's combined with an awareness of our interconnected nature. And so again, that provides teachers with a coping strategy, being able to respond with loving kindness whilst maintaining healthy boundaries. yoga promotes mindful expression, and that's super important, because all day long, and not just in the workplace, but also in the community, teachers and support staff are having to suppress their real emotions. And if opportunities aren't provided to release those negative emotions in a healthy way, then they are, again, going to have a really detrimental effect on health and well-being. And you can understand that people might move to unhealthy ways of releasing those negative emotions. Yeah, and mindfulness. I mean, yoga helps us to develop the type of mindfulness that allows you to just step out of yourself every now and then. Step out of yourself in the madness of the classroom. Take a moment, remind yourself that this game we call teaching should be joyful before you step back in and carry on with your day. And I would say also, in all seriousness, that my yogic philosophy and my awareness has allowed me to remember that our, dare I say, hugely flawed education system is merely a social construct. It's learning and it's relationships that are real. And yoga provides us so much with an opportunity to develop ourselves, to transform ourselves, and therefore to transform the relationships. And for teachers and support staff, that means transforming the relationships that they have with young people, and remembering that they probably see those young people more on a day-to-day basis than those young people's parents do. So I'll be exploring all of this much more in the CPD, and hopefully in a more structured way. I'll be giving more of an insight into the reality of a teacher's working day, the particular or the common issues that they face, and how these can affect their health and well-being. I'll be exploring all of that using yogic diagnostic tools, kosha system, and in particular pranamaya kosha and the chakra system. I'll be looking at themes that can be used in staff-based yoga sessions. Very often these are short sessions, so exploring how they can be delivered in a nurturing way with a focus on compassion and really, in particular, letting go, releasing, surrendering. I'll be suggesting tools that teachers could use during their working day and even share with their students. And really, for yoga teachers, providing some tools for them that they can use when approaching schools, especially if they are brave enough to say yoga in schools. Don't forget about the teachers. So that concludes the talk. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now so that those of you that are here live, we can have a Q&A and you can provide me with some feedback. But to everybody, thank you and namaste.